I really try to pick cases that we can summarize, cases that actually have an impact on you here in California. This is a case out of Ohio. An Ohio judge strikes down a law prohibiting people under indictment for having a gun, or from having a gun. So in other words, if they're under indictment in Ohio, they're not allowed to have a gun. They're basically a prohibited person. The interesting thing about this case is it's one of the cases that use the Heller and Bruin analysis, which is becoming the standard, which is why Bruin was such an important case, and why I've said Bruin isn't the end. Bruin is just a tool, a very powerful tool that we can use to restore and preserve our rights. This law that prohibits people from having a gun if they're under indictment, it's only about 50 years old, which means it wasn't around in 1791 when they wrote the Second Amendment. And there's really only a few states that have this law. So first off, actually, let me read a little bit here. This is from Reason. Reason wrote an article here. Ohio court strikes down categorical prohibition on gun possession by people under indictment. A few months ago, the Sixth Circuit upheld the federal categorical prohibition on gun acquisition and transportation by people under indictment. An excerpt from Friday's long decision in State versus Brown, written by Ohio Court of Appeals Judge Pierre Bergeron, joined by Judge Jennifer Kinsley. In 2023, a grand jury indicted Mr. Brown on one count of robbery. The court released Mr. Brown on bond with an electric monitor on his ankle, but it did not place any restrictions on his ability to possess a firearm. During a home visit by the EMU team, they located a loaded firearm in the apartment. This discovery spawned a new indictment pursuant to state law for having a weapon under a disability. The state's robbery case against Mr. Brown eventually collapsed, which led to the dismissal of those charges against him. But the weapons under a disability case was still at play. So in other words, they said, hey, we think you robbed somebody, this guy, Mr. Brown. And they indicted him. Now, Gary, what exactly is how do you explain an indictment? Explain it to me like I'm 5 years old. What exactly is an indictment?
Well, let me explain it to you in California, because every state's a little different. And federal court's a little different. There are two ways for a felony to move through the court system. You can have your felony case go to preliminary hearing, which is a hearing where you get a lawyer, they get a lawyer, and a judge will decide whether there's a sufficiency of evidence or enough evidence to have reasonable cause to believe you committed the crime. So that's a preliminary hearing. Well, you can avoid a preliminary hearing, or the prosecutor can avoid a preliminary hearing in California by seeking an indictment. An indictment means you just take the same case to the grand jury. Well, at the grand jury, there's no defense lawyer. So there's an old line that's pretty appropriate that a prosecutor could indict a ham sandwich because there's nobody on the defendant's side in an indictment.
They get to show what they want to show, and they
get to do whatever they want basically, right, as long as they present any exculpatory evidence. That's required in California.
Okay.
But at the end of the indictment process, if a grand jury returns an indictment, it's just like a judge said at the end of a preliminary hearing, well, I find there's sufficient evidence. Well, if either one of those things happens in California, at that moment you become a prohibited person and you got to give up your guns until the case is over.
Right. And there was in the dissent, by the way. So he was suspected of robbery. Mm-hmm. They indicted him. He's going through the process. They even said, "Hey, you got to wear this ankle monitor. We're not going to put you in jail, but you got to wear this ankle monitor." And when they checked on him, they found that he had a firearm. And apparently, the state of Ohio prohibits people who are under indictment from having a firearm. Is that the same here in California?
Exactly the same.
Exactly the same here in California.
So that means that California's law is susceptible to a Heller and Bruin attack.
At least at this level, which is why I wanted people to see that. I think that this is, I'm going to say, kissing cousins to the idea of red flag laws or what's it called?
Gun violence restraining order?
Gun violence restraining order. Yeah, sorry. So it's a kissing cousin to a gun violence restraining order. The judge here is basically saying, hey, look, this guy, we don't know if he committed a crime yet. He hasn't been convicted. So you can't take his basic right to self-defense away, which is the Second Amendment. That's the same case we're making in these gun violence restraining orders. Is it, you know, it's not the same, but don't you think it's kind of side by side, a kissing cousin?
It is. But Michael, you and I have talked about this. California, certainly San Diego, and if you don't know this, California is the tip of the spear for gun violence restraining orders, red flag laws nationwide. All the bad ideas with regard to gun violence restraining order and red flag laws come out of this county, starting in 2017. But the prosecutors and the police have avoided this problem. They don't need to wait for somebody to get indicted or somebody to have a preliminary hearing finding. They are GVROing people at the beginning of the case. Yeah. So you'll be arrested, you'll get a criminal case, and they'll GVRO you at the same time. And so you're losing your guns the same day you're arrested.
And there you go. And this judge is saying, hey, you know what? That's unconstitutional. This isn't final, but I thought it was very, very good news that, hey, there's another court out there that's basically making the same case for us. It's in a slightly different situation, but the Second Amendment is not a secondary right. So there you go.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for watching. I'm Michael from Gun Owners Radio. If you liked what you saw, please don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and make a comment. Help us out. Go to gunownersradio.com. Thanks for watching.